Hey everybody, it's Silver Shroom, and welcome back to the Blender Solar System. Last time we rounded out the planets with the planet Neptune, but planets are not the only things populating our solar system. Starting now, we're going to be talking about dwarf planets. The International Astronomical Union, or IAU, which is the organization responsible for naming and classifying celestial bodies, defines a dwarf planet as an object that 1. Orbits the Sun, 2. is in hydrostatic equilibrium, which is basically a relaxed state characterized by the roundness of a celestial object, but not all of them that are round are in hydrostatic equilibrium. It's a bit complicated. And 3. has not cleared its orbit of debris. If it has, it's a planet. Yeah, the definition is a bit vague, and obviously not everybody agrees with it, but we'll get into that later. Now, the IAU has officially recognized 5 dwarf planets, which I have depicted, along with 4 objects that are not officially dwarf planets, but are recognized as such by scientific consensus. So, without further ado, the first dwarf planet we're going to talk about is Ceres. Now, Ceres is the largest object in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Of the official dwarf planets, it is the smallest and closest to the Sun, and the only one to reside entirely within Neptune's orbit. All the others orbit beyond Neptune. Ceres was discovered on January 1st, 1801, by Italian astronomer Giuseppe Piazzi. Now, at the time, many astronomers believed in this law called the Titius-Bode law, which mathematically predicted the positions of planets. It was supported by the 6 planets known at the time: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, except for a gap between Mars and Jupiter. And this law was further supported by the discovery of Uranus. So a team was put together to see if they could find a planet between them. But before he even joined this team, Piazzi discovered what he thought was a comet, but its slower and more uniform movements led to his fellow scientists believing that it was in fact a planet, and Ceres was added to the roster of planets. However, the aforementioned Titius-Bode law was ultimately debunked because Neptune was discovered and it was nowhere near the predicted position, so that's out the window. So anyway, in naming his discovery, Piazzi proposed the name Ceres Ferdinandea, Ceres being the Italian name of Ceres, the Roman goddess of agriculture, who is known to the Greeks as Demeter. And Ferdinandea came from King Ferdinand of Sicily. However, Ferdinandea was not accepted by other countries and was dropped in favor of just the goddess's name. Now, after Ceres was discovered, 3 more objects were discovered orbiting in the same area as it. These were named Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. These were added to the planetary roster just like Ceres, and they gained quite a legacy. Ceres and Pallas are the namesake of the 2 elements cerium and palladium. But as more and more objects in that area were discovered, scientists became less comfortable with calling it a planet. Eventually, it was decided that these objects would no longer be considered planets, and in the mid-1800s, Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta were all reclassified as asteroids. Asteroid meant star-like, as they still appeared as stars even through powerful telescopes due to their smallness. However, at this point, they never officially defined what a planet was. This changed in 2006 with the controversy surrounding Pluto, when the aforementioned definition of a planet was implemented by the IAU. Ceres, along with Pluto, was reclassified as a dwarf planet. Now, the IAU never officially specified over whether Ceres is still considered an asteroid. It's possible that it's simply both a dwarf planet and an asteroid, but still, asteroid has never been officially defined by them. So, looking at the Cererian stats, Ceres has a diameter of about 950 kilometers. And on its own, it contains 1/3 of all of the mass in the asteroid belt. It rotates in about 9 hours and 4 minutes. It's going to appear to rotate pretty fast. There we go. And it has an axial tilt of only about 4 degrees, so there aren't really any seasons. As you can see, it has a fairly dark surface with bright spots that I believe are like salt deposits, as observed by the space probe Dawn. Oh, and also, when Ceres first became an asteroid, minor planets like it received numbers, and Ceres, as the first one discovered, has the number 1 as its minor planet designation. So, with all that out of the way, let's take a look at Ceres' orbit. So, now in addition to the planets, we now have a Ceres orbit, which, as you can see, is between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, though slightly closer to Mars. Ceres orbits the Sun in about 4.6 years, at an average distance of about 414 million kilometers, or just over 2.75 astronomical units. Now, its orbit isn't all that elliptical. It's actually less elliptical than Mercury's, but it is heavily inclined with an angle of about 10.6 degrees to the ecliptic plane. Now let's get a quick view of it from Earth. Okay, here we go. And let's get it a bit more into focus. And there we go. Ceres is a bit too dark and too small to be seen without a telescope from Earth, except under extremely dark skies, but here we can see it. So, that's it for Ceres. Next time, the Blender solar system. We're going to move on to the next dwarf planet. See you then.